Okay, welcome back. This is our second intermediate pattern, pattern number 10. It is a K pattern as you see here on the screen. So let's get started. As usual, we're going to declare an integer variable called num. And we're going to assign a value of 7 to it. Additionally, we're going to create our two loops, our I loop, which prints our rows, and our J loop, which prints our columns. Additionally, if you divide your pattern into an upper and a lower part, it would be easier to understand it. It also would be easier to try to logically problem solve how you're going to print this pattern. So, as we look at our pattern, we notice that the rows go from row number 7 all the way to row number 1. And the columns go from column number 1 to whatever the row number is. Okay, so remember, rows are horizontal and columns are vertical. So let's go back up and look at our first for loop, which is the I loop. It prints the rows. And where does our row start? We said rows start from 7. And 7 already has a variable called num. So we're going to say I is equal to num. Now, so where does our row end? Our row end at row number 1. That is for the first part of the loop. So we're going to say for int I is equal to num, I is greater than and equal to 1. And that would be a decrement because our rows do decrement. Our rows are decreasing, in other words. Now let's look at our columns. Where does our column start? It starts at 1. So we're going to say 1. And our column goes to whatever our row number is, whatever the iteration is. So we're going to say less than and equal to I. And then we're going to say J++. Okay, and what are we printing? What changes? The columns changes. Therefore, we are going to print the columns. Okay, so now let's print that and see if we get the first part of our loop. And there we go. We got the first part of our K. So we know we're on the right track. Now let's print the second part of our K. I'm going to pull this back down. Okay, so when we look at the second part of our K from line 36 all the way to line 41, what are we noticing? Where does the row start? The row starts from 2 and it ends at 7. So let's put that in. Very simple. If you are on an interview, just copy and paste. It's so much easier because generally when you're on an interview, you're timed. So efficiency of writing your code is very important. Okay, so as we said, the I loop, which is the rows, it starts at 2 and it ends at 7. So we're going to say for int num is equal to 2, int num less than and equal to 7. Okay, and then we're going to say I++. Okay, now for our columns, does the column change? It starts at 1 and it ends at I. So for the second part of our loop, we're not going to change the J loop. The J loop remains the same. We're just manipulating the I loop for the second part of the pattern. Now let's run that and print it. And there it is. There is our K pattern for this intermediate pattern. Okay, so as usual, all of the codes will be available on GitHub. You could check my GitHub to get these codes. And our next pattern will be pattern number 11, which is this beautiful looking pattern here. So stay tuned. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel and drop me a comment, and see you in our next pattern. Happy testing.